Cool, dude. Thanks for doing this. I'm a big fan of all your work. I really like your video essays you do on the Coffee Break channel, as well as I'm a huge fan of your exposing internet frauds on the CoffeeZilla channel as well.
Thank you, man. Happy to be here.
Cool. How did you get into doing those video essays? I love the video essays. They're like their own little mini documentaries. They seem like they take a lot of time and research.
Yeah. So I kind of got into them after college, and it was sort of like I would research for a month, whatever I was interested in at the time. You know, I like to read a lot. So I would just find myself reading this stuff anyways, and it gave me an excuse to try to monetize it. And so that's what I was doing for a while. I would prepare for a month, and then I would that was a way for me to close the chapters. I would make a video about it, basically. Yeah. And so it's hard to describe to people because the topics are so miscellaneous. CoffeeZilla is a channel that I can explain a little bit easier, falls into one category or another a little more easily. But if you try to describe what I do on Coffee Break, the topics are much more me following my own nose. So yeah, no, I love Coffee Break. I'm going to still make some videos for it. I've just taken a little break as I've dived into this other end of the pool.
Has anyone ever told you sound a lot like PewDiePie? Like you have the same voice.
No.
It's very, very similar. Minus the Swedish accent. But yeah, that's my first thing I noticed about you. I'm like, this dude sounds like PewDiePie. It made me instantly like you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was about to say that's a polarizing, I didn't know where you were going with that. I thought you might have been going the other direction. It really turned me off of your content.
Did people not like him?
Some people don't. I like him. But,
yeah, I think he's hilarious.
It's a nice compliment.
He's not selling any courses. That's a good thing.
That's for sure. And like the dude gives a ton away to charity. I actually find, I think he just has some controversial things in his past, but I find that it actually makes creators it kind of gives them an arc to their story. If you've always been just this likable guy, it's hard to become more likable. But if you've kind of had some problems in your past, you become a more compelling kind of person, I guess.
Yeah, you kind of you can see with him especially, I mean, he's grown and learned his entire career from where he started to where he is now. You can kind of see the character development, if you will, of him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I mean, I learned a lot from some of your video essays that I watched, especially the one about pop science, where you talk a lot about these entertainers that educate and how celebrities can people trust celebrities or people with public figures like Bill Nye, for example. People will inherently trust them in what they're saying, even if the facts aren't necessarily true. I just thought that culture, that whole kind of idea that you were exploring in that video was super interesting to me.
Yeah, it's I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of memes, sort of as an idea, ideas that are spreadable sort of things, like the spreadability of an idea being a trait of the idea.
A marketable idea, kind of.
Yes, yeah. So the big thought there is that the virality of our education or of our science ideas is not correlated to the truth of the idea. So we have these ideas. There is some correlation because if you learn that an idea is just wrong, you won't spread it around. But some of our most viral ideas, they get spread around in a overly simplified form that makes them almost untrue. So a great example of that is the 10,000 hour rule, which most people know from Malcolm Gladwell. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that rule.
Oh, okay. So 10,000 hours was this famous idea that, all experts, they have about 10,000 hours in the bank. So if you want to be an expert, you have to put in roughly 10,000 hours to be an expert at any given thing. That was a big idea in 2014, 2012, maybe even before that. But when you go over to the actual researcher who did the studies, he says, wait, no. 10,000 hours is sort of just this arbitrary number. People loved it because it was this really clean number, but it has nothing to do with 10,000 hours. It actually has to do with deliberate practice and not to do with the number of hours you necessarily put in. Of course, you have to put in a lot of hours to be an expert, but the nuanced truth of that got muddied up when it just became this headline of you got to do hey, haven't you heard the 10,000 hour rule? Malcolm Gladwell, dude. Just put in your 10,000 hours.
Yeah, it reminds me of YouTube videos. People will use compelling headlines in their videos to get more views on all their content. I mean, most YouTubers do that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what's the point? Obviously, you're going to make great content. You don't want to, I mean, no matter how much integrity you claim to have in your own content, you always want
the most people to see it.
Right, exactly. You want it to be marketable to some extent.
Let me tell you something. So I haven't talked about this too much publicly, but one of the reasons that I stopped publishing on Coffee Break, one of them, there's a few reasons. One of them was I've gotten extremely jaded with the concept of online education on video. Sorry, I should preface that. Online video education. I don't think it's really that good. I think it's actually terrible. Video as a medium is a bad medium for education, like true. When I say true education, I mean education that cannot be summarized in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or in a little podcast. I'm talking about education that is hierarchical, like math, for example. Math is a great example. Because you can't just show up in a Cal class having not taken the prerequisites of Algebra 2, Algebra 1. That's what I mean by hierarchical.
Right.
Video's not good for that. Video, the primary form that it takes, that it is economically viable at, is entertainment. So when you see a lot of these education creators, who's one of the biggest education creators? Like Mark Rober. He's fundamentally an entertainer first. The function of his videos always have to serve. It's a slave to entertainment first, because otherwise no one's going to watch it and you lose the viewership. If you just start really getting into exposition, which is where the real education happens, by the way, and the real nuance happens, you lose all the viewers. And so I was getting frustrated because I was taking these ideas that were increasingly complex. As I just cared more about the ideas and getting to talking to experts, you really quickly find that in any field worth looking into, it's going to be complicated. And there's going to be experts who've all spent their whole lives studying this thing, and there's going to be two of them that totally disagree. They both think each other are idiots.
Right.
And to tell that story meaningfully, you have to give due to both sides. You have to explain that maybe we don't know. Maybe there isn't a way to summarize this very nicely. But that comes at the cost of the viewer. And if you want to make a real viral hitter on YouTube, and which is the way to make education viable, because you have to do sponsorships, you have to do all those things to make your channel work, and they're just looking at views, you kind of have to simplify. You have to cut things out. You have to trim the script. And so I was getting super frustrated with that. And one of my friends who was like this, who had been in the education game for a long time, on YouTube, he said, "Oh yeah, really you're trying to make your audience feel smart, not be smart. You're trying to make them feel smart." He goes, "An educational video is going to be great if it makes your audience is the type of people who want to feel smart." And that's when I was like, all right, dude, I've got to find some other, if I'm in the entertainment industry, then I'm just going to entertain, but I'm not going to have the pretense of like trying to teach people something if that's not really what I'm able to do. Obviously, and of course there's limitations to this. It doesn't mean that no one's learning on video, but it means you always have to entertain first if you want to be successful. And that's a bitter pill to swallow if you care about the actual topic and the material.
Interesting. Well,
how do you feel about that?
I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel like
you might disagree. It's fine. If you disagree, tell me.
No, I don't think I disagree. I think that I think number one, it's definitely better to have entertainment that has some sort of education tied to it rather than just, been watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I'd rather watch a video essay or a documentary. They're kind of the same thing. A documentary on Netflix or HBO that is has great cinematography, has great storytelling, has dope music that goes along with it, and makes me more compelled to watch it. Makes, something that I can sit down with my wife and eat popcorn and watch it and we both enjoy it. That's not just like fucking sitting down reading textbooks. So I think there's a huge benefit.
Middle ground, you mean? Sort of a middle ground there?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a middle ground. I mean, I don't know.
I think no, I think there is too. And to be clear, in my videos, I never have really escaped the trying to educate people to some extent. I'm still trying to educate people on marketing, shady marketing, bad actors, all these things. But I've accepted the fact that entertainment comes first. And I think that was a hard pill to swallow because Coffee Break was my art project. It was my thing that I was really trying to be pure about. And when you're purely trying to educate, that is a bitter pill to swallow. I agree with you that there's really meaningful work to be done on the margins of doing a bit of both. And I think there are creators out there that are doing that. They're funding themselves with things like Patreon. They're funding themselves with other things. But you find the more you go towards the education, this is the bitter pill. The more you go towards the actually educational, the less economical it gets.
True.
So that's kind of the bitter pill to swallow, is that the people who are going to succeed are not always the people doing the due diligence, or they're just the people hyping up the entertainment and really lowering that actual meaningful.